Hi, welcome to Guild Chat, where we are currently celebrating the return of the Festival of the Four Winds. I'm your host, Ruby, and today I'm going to be talking to some of the team that brought you the Festival of the Four Winds. Let's start with our first two devs. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and talk about your part in bringing this back.
All right. I'm Joe Kimmis, the current activities team lead and designer. So let's see. So for bringing this festival back, I started work on it after we finished work for this year's Super Adventure Box Festival. And prior to that, Matthew Medina had done a lot of the groundwork for the festival and getting the maps back and starting to hook stuff up and see what does it look like? Do the events still work? Let's turn on mounts in these maps and see how it feels. So when I came on, I did a lot of the sort of festival boilerplate, like bringing back the achievements, creating new achievements that were repeatable, or fixing up the daily achievements, and then setting up some of the sort of festival connective tissue for like the NPCs in towns who can route you to the festival maps or send you between the festival maps, and making sure those all had little icons on the map and all of that stuff. And after that, I ended up taking over a lot of the Crown Pavilion stuff, so Queen's Gauntlet and Boss Blitz, and coordinating those with the rest of the team and making sure we had a plan and playtesting it, doing tuning on all of that, and rewards, and a lot of stuff. It's a big festival.
So a few things.
Yeah.
How about you, Brett?
I'm Brett Nellermo, and I'm the QA embed on the current activities team. So I'm responsible for all of the test planning and a large portion of the testing for all of our stuff. And I started later than Joe, but mainly because we had two other current activities releases and legendary weapon, so just finding time in between those other things to work on this. And thankfully a lot of the stuff from last year was still usable, so a little bit less of a load because of that.
Lots of stuff to test, though.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, bringing something back like this after this many years had to have been super, super exciting, but probably a tiny bit scary.
Yeah, well, it's we had a lot of players who would ask about it whenever they had the chance. Be like, hey, can Labyrinthine Cliffs come back?
Yeah.
When are we going to see this again? And a couple times in the past, we had batted around the idea and said, okay, what's it going to take? And you would go to that map and remember the Zephyr Sanctum airship taking up so much of it. And it unfortunately had crashed in a earlier season of the game. And we're like, okay, so there's a lot that has to happen. And it got shelved a couple times, and then finally we had the chance where we're like, okay, there's a lot of we have the right team for it. We've got Matthew Medina helping us out, who knows a lot about the festival. And kind of the opportunity was there, so we seized the chance. But going back in and seeing everything again, and okay, there needs to be a lot of new dialogue here, explaining the whole thing.
Something that you had mentioned, speaking of players asking, you were comfortable with that for a while because players were asking, you were able to be honest and say that's not something we're working on right now.
Oh, yeah.
But that was that got nerve-wracking the past few months.
We had a couple, forum chats or interviews where someone would ask, hey, I really want Labyrinthine Cliffs. When is that coming back? And when I can, I try to answer people's questions, even if it's in the negative, right? And so I asked around, hey, is anybody actually doing it? And I was like, well, our team handles the festivals. We would really, really like to bring this back, but we are not currently working on it. And I was honest about that at the time.
Yeah.
And then a couple months later, we were like, okay, this is something we can do. We're going to start working on it soon. And we had another forum chat where I was like, okay, I really hope nobody comes to me and says, how about now? Are you working on it now? Because then I would have to just kind of ignore the question. And I just knew if that happened, there would be the post the next day saying, hey, in 3 months ago, Joe said that we weren't doing this thing, and now he didn't respond. So I think
Festival confirmed.
yeah.
Yes,
I think
clearly means
100% ArenaNet just committed to bringing the festival back this year.
that had to have been, well, you got lucky, so
Yeah, it worked out. Or I just didn't see the question. I apologize to whoever asked the question. And
good hanging in there. Well, let's talk about some of the specifics, because I want to talk about a couple of the bosses in the Queen's Gauntlet, because you guys have one who has been training for literally years. And
yeah, that was another of the recurring player questions, was about Suriel.
Mhm.
When we rebuilt Lion's Arch, one of the designers added her. She's one of the contestants. She's one of the combatants you can fight in
Mhm.
Queen's Gauntlet, and I think she's the final boss of the first round normally. And they added her as kind of a flavor NPC in Lion's Arch, where she's running around the city, and it just said her tag is like training for the next gauntlet. And it was kind of one of those like, okay, like this designer put that, but we're not making that right now, right? But it became this recurring, like, well, she's been training for a couple years, like, and whenever we were asked about bringing back the Crown Pavilion, usually someone would chime in like, oh man, like I can't wait to fight Suriel again because she must be like really strong by now, right? After doing continuous laps
for years.
for years.
Yeah.
That-
And, sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's incredible strength training, right? So when we were working on it, that was one of the things we were like, okay, 100%, we have to have a new version of her fight.
Yeah, seriously. And actually, I'll kind of look at Brett for this, since you were working on QA
well, I
on
would-
this, because she did get very, very strong and a little bit too strong while in testing.
Yeah, there was a period of time where it was just she would absolutely destroy you after her punch combo.
Yeah,
Kick you over the edge of the arena
Right.
before we increase the collision size of the invisible walls, and then she'd just boot you out completely and you
Yeah.
die from fall damage.
yeah, you would get ring out and just instantly lose.
And to me, this makes sense,
Yeah,
because she
absolutely.
would.
Yeah, I almost wanted to leave that in, but it was like it was a little bit glitchy feeling and unexpected for you to get launched out.
It really, really was, but it's hilariously appropriate. So I know it's a bug, and I know you had to
Yeah.
fix it, but
Well,
I
actually-
love that it was there.
Yeah, all that exercise pays off.
Yeah, seriously.
Strong kicks.
And you guys mentioned, when did we take her out of Lion's Arch?
So at this point, it would have been 2 or 3 weeks ago. The build before we announced the return of Festival of the Four Winds, we quietly went in and just turned off her spawns. She was no longer running around Lion's Arch, and we wanted to see if anybody would be like, hey, like this NPC is gone now. Like, what does it mean? And we had to make sure we told the community team, like, hey, if anybody asks, don't say anything, but we are putting in this little, like, kind of Easter egg hint
Yeah.
at the festival coming back. She's got a really long route, too. So we did the build, and I was like, okay, like, can we check to see if she's gone? And Brett was saying, like, well, like, there's a lot of Lion's Arch to check, and she's moving.
Yeah. Easy to test in a testing environment, but doing it on live is a little bit more of a task.
So every day I would kind of be like, well, I haven't seen anyone post about it. Maybe, is she still there? And I'd go run around a little, and I didn't see her. And so we couldn't exactly,
Yeah.
I never
Ask.
actually saw anyone say anything.
yeah.
So I don't know if any of you guys ever noticed that Suriel's been gone for a couple weeks.
I assume we would have seen a post about it by now.
Yes, I mean, if you did, you didn't say anything where I noticed, but yeah, she was gone, and I don't know if
Yeah.
if you guys ever like just got desperate enough to run her entire route in reverse just to
Yeah.
find out. But yep, she's been gone for a little while, just back there preparing for Queen's Gauntlet.
Yeah, and then I'm sure when the
Yeah.
festival ends, she'll continue being gone for a while just because of we're not.
yeah.
There won't be time to patch it back in, but I'm really looking forward to adding her back in and hopefully like tuning up her routine a little so that she can keep working and
Actually, I was wondering,
stay fresh for the next
since
festival.
we've added Surreal back in as a second fight, does that mean that she's been serialized?
Did we say you couldn't do that? Or is that...
I begged him to do that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I really liked it when he did that the first time. I was like, please do it again. It was good.
This is what the team has to work with.
Thank him.
I'm happy to provide.
I honestly, if she goes back out there, I want to see her like lounging on the beach and saying something like, I earned this.
Right. Well, and
4 years, you guys.
I kind of want to give her more of a sequence, so it's not just
She's
running
learned some new
laps,
moves.
but
Yeah.
stops and
Some handsprings or something.
does a little shadow boxing.
Something like that. All right. Well, let's talk about a couple of the other ones because Tri-Asa had some really good stuff in testing too that also makes me happy. Because he had the salute at the start.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So currently, Tri-Asa has a salute move that he does at the start of the fight. So initially, he would just immediately go into his attack routine, which was a little bit jarring and made the skill floor seem possibly too high.
We had
I think
testers who were
mean.
losing in like the first 2 seconds of the fight.
Right.
Like you get to the arena and you're like, all right, who am I? Oh, I've lost half my hit points.
But another tester found that while he was doing that salute, if he was getting attacked fast enough, he would just restart the salute over and over again. So you could...
Because he didn't
has
get to
something,
finish.
Right. He
Yeah.
has something like 90% damage reduction during the first phase of his fight, so you could just very, very slowly whittle him down.
Yeah, the toughest thing with having those complicated one-on-one fights is
Mhm.
that you end up with these edge cases that you didn't think of, where
Mhm.
some classes' unique ability or like teleport move or minions mess something up.
Mhm.
I had a version at one point of the Surreal fight where she won't attack minions intentionally, but the minions can get hit by her attacks,
Mhm.
and she would get into a sequence where she started punching one of the minions. And one of her things is if you get caught in her repeated punch move, she'll keep punching you until you're low enough for her to do the finishing kick.
Okay.
And she did less damage to minions because minions have a bit of like default damage reduction to keep them
Okay.
from just getting blown up by things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And she would sit there punching Flesh Golem for like 30 seconds, and you could just DPS her during that time. And this Flesh Golem just sitting there tanking the hit. And I was like, okay, I gotta figure out a way to fix this now. We had some tester who was like, this fight was really easy. Like, she just hit my Flesh Golem for like a solid minute while I was killing her. And I was like, it's supposed to be one of the harder fights, actually.
And your tester's over there going,
Yeah, right. We get this weird feedback where they're like, yeah, I beat them all on the first try. I'm like, how?
we're taking your flesh golem away. That's not okay.
Yeah.
Flash
Thought
Golem
about it.
canceled.
Well, I want to talk about boss blitz too, but real quick, because I have seen a couple questions coming in, we are going to take a few minutes of questions at the end of these guys' segments. So if you have any, put them in chat, and we'll try to get to a few of those before we finish up. So let's talk about the boss blitz, because there is some really fun Guild Wars 1 throwback stuff there, which is... Well, yes, because you're here, and it's fun. We have Hablion in there.
Yeah, so one of our other like big goals in bringing the festival back was so the first time Crime Pavilion was released, I don't even remember what team I was on at the time now that I think about it.
It's been a while.
Yeah, but I saw the pitch for it, and we're like, okay, we're gonna have this giant arena under Divinity's Reach, and it'll be split into like 6 sections, and they'll
Mhm.
each feature recreations of one of like humanity's historic enemies. And I was talking to a designer, I was like, okay, so like who is there? And they're like, all right, well, there's the centaurs, obviously, because like,
Because centaurs.
yeah, they're a constant threat. There's bandits. There's like dragon minions, like the destroyers. And he listed them all. I was
Mhm.
like, wait, what about the White Mantle? Like, that's got to be one of the big ones, right? In Guild Wars 1, they were one of the major enemies of Krita.
Right.
They controlled Krita for a long time, and then we had the war in Krita where they were overthrown by the Shining Blade and citizens of Krita. It's like they've got to be one of the things, right?
Well, sure.
And at the time, we didn't do it because they had appeared a little in the story, and we knew they were going to appear again. Like they were going to be there was going to be a moment when the White Mantle came back, and you had to fend them off again. And so we knew when we did that, there was going to be some kind of like, here's their, fully featured, cool new army, right?
Yeah.
They were going to have custom moves and stuff. And so we're not doing that now. We don't want to add some like, really tailored White Mantle enemy group, because then you'd be like, oh, the White Mantle must be coming back, right? They wouldn't do this.
Right.
For
You don't
no
want to
reason.
take away from that.
Yeah. And so they kind of glossed over, and I like to think that like in setting, it's that the Crichton leadership, Queen Jenna's pretty brave, but the council, I'm trying to remember. I can imagine them kind of being like, listen, like we know there are White Mantles still out there. Let's not make a big deal out of it.
Yes,
right?
let's just kind of shh.
Yeah, let's try to get people to forget them and not give any like covert White Mantle sympathizers something to kind of rally around. But now in the story, we've finally destroyed the White Mantle for good. Surely.
That felt ominous.
And so I assure you, it's not any kind. I'm not like. As far as I know, they're gone. Some story designers watching this. But so now they came back out of the shadows. They've been defeated. Now is a good chance to have them take over one of the existing sections of the pavilion, and we've got the cool army for them. We've got like, boss skills. We've got themed like set pieces for them. We can redecorate that section, and it kind of makes sense because they've been overthrown, and now Krita wants to present them as like, this is one of the many enemies that we have defeated. They're gone for good. It's dealt with. They're a historic problem.
And it's actually kind of a feel-good thing now.
Yeah.
We also got a decent amount of feedback, and both externally and internally, about the ogre boss, and that having mechanics that were kind of contrary to playing with each other, because it was easy to make it harder for other people, and it wasn't super easily or wasn't well messaged for newer players.
Yeah. So I apologize to any of the like huge ogre fans out there, but we looked at all the different existing forces. Okay, we can't get rid of the centaurs, right? And it came down to, let's see if we can, like the ogres were the one that was going to get cut.
Yeah.
Plus, for ogre fans, there are still some hanging out.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
we
tell me
kept
about this.
Go ahead.
So, a idea that Joe had pretty early on was to have some. It would be funny to have some groups of ogres still hanging out, like they got missed, or maybe their programming sent them off course, because everything in the Crown Pavilion is watch nights. So our map artist he did a great job. He removed the giant airship from the Kite City map, and he added in the entire new pie slice that we got this year. And we told him this idea, and he said, oh yeah, I can totally do that. And he made just like a tiny little camp that's nestled in the back corner of the White Mantle section to have the ogres in. And just to make sure that we didn't have people camping their camp and destroying their spawns, and so that people could still get the achievement to kill a couple of ogres. There's a couple of other hidden spots that are just a little out of the way.
Yeah, we hit a few groups of ogres across the map.
Yeah. So there's an achievement for killing them.
Yes.
For those of you who haven't figured that out yet. Yeah. So you mentioned that they're all watch nights. For those of you, a lot of people are new to this festival, which is so much fun to me because there's been a lot of feedback. I mean, we have a lot of players who were here last time and are very happy that it's back. A lot of other players who are, wow, I've heard of this festival, but I wasn't here for round one. So now I get to participate. So all of these enemies are watch nights in disguise.
Yeah, so another facet of the Crown Pavilion originally was that it's kind of an excuse to show off the progression of human technology, right? Because
Right.
they're surrounded by, like there's the Asura, fairly
Mhm.
close to Divinity's Reach, who have this incredible magical technology.
Right.
And there's, even in the human personal story, there's some like undercurrent of like humanity has technology, right? But
Mhm.
are they kind of outmatched by the Char or the Asura, who respectively have their own takes on
Yeah.
building their engines of war or their golems and so on. So the Watch Knights were sort of a like, hey, look, we can do this cool thing too, and they're these like clockwork mechanical soldiers.
Hmm.
And in the Crown Pavilion, they're all enchanted with mesmer illusion to look like the different armies that you're fighting, and it's actually really cool if you go fight some of them alone, so that you don't have too many distractions. You can see as they die that like the external destroyer or char or white mantle enemy will like mesmer fade away, and you'll see the Watch Knight underneath it fall over.
Which is extremely cool.
Yeah.
And this is a new model of Watch Knight, right?
Yeah, one of the other requests we put in this year to the art team was to get a like kind of Mark II version of the Watch Knight to
Mhm.
show that since the last time this ran, the technology has progressed. The Watch Knights actually showed up again in the Lake Doric
Yeah,
map,
yeah.
where you could see them fighting alongside the Crichton soldiers against the White Mantle.
Mhm.
And I kind of like to think that that was the first time we'd seen them in a long time.
Mhm.
And I think part of that was because the first time the Watch Knights were rolled out, there was kind of a like huge disaster where
It
control
didn't
of
go
them,
great.
yeah, control of them was taken away, and a lot of them turned into horrific nightmare monstrosities and had whirling saw blades and stuff. And that's never a good like.
It was not.
It's not a good like PR look, right? So I think they finally had the opportunity to be like, okay, look, the purpose of these things is to help us fight our wars. Here's a chance to do that. And then after the Lake Doric campaign, I think there was more support for like, hey, it worked. None of them
Mhm.
went crazy. None of them shot flame at any of our soldiers.
Mhm.
So let's reinvest in this. And the
Mhm.
result of that is the Watch Knight Mark II, which is a kind of like sleeker, more modern version. It's the like next generation of Watch Knight. And part of the request that we gave to the artists was like, okay, this is intentionally supposed to be sort of the like softer looking version, right? This is the like, don't worry, people of Kryta, it is not going to unhinge its jaw and scream at you.
Yay!
Because I think by design, the initial Watch Knight sort of looks like it
Yeah,
is kind of creepy.
they're kind
so
of,
then it can
yeah.
transition into being
they've got kind
an
of
enemy.
they're unsettling, I think. And the new Watch Knight is still, I really like the model that the artists made. It still
It looks
preserves
good.
some of that like, it's not like friendly looking, right? But it looks much more like you're like, okay, this isn't going to suddenly rebel against us. It doesn't look
Right.
as gloomy or dark.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
So-
a battle robot instead of a horror movie.
Exactly. And if you watch in Crown Pavilion, all of the veteran mobs are still the old Watch Knight, because I think they're working through their extra supply. What you don't throw away working machinery, right?
I'm sorry, I'm picturing a warehouse.
Yeah, like
Ooh,
we don't know
I
how
don't
many
like
of
that.
them. We don't know how many
No.
of them they have, but they're safe now. They were safe last time the festival ran. I believe Lord Farron was on the committee that oversaw the addition of like new safety regulations for them.
Oh,
So
sure,
it's
that's a
fine
great
now.
idea.
He's trustworthy. He's rich.
You know.
But
Well done.
so all the veteran mobs are still the old Watch Knight, and all of the legendary and champion mobs, or the opponents you fight up in Queen's Gauntlet, are all the new Watch Knight.
Okay.
So as they die, you'll see the new model. And one of the new rewards you can get is a combat tonic of the new Watch Knights that you can run around as one of them.
Okay. I actually hadn't noticed that about the old ones, so that's extremely cool. Oh. All right, I want to touch on one more thing that we had fixed beforehand, because because you had to reduce the scope of some of the areas, and the resulting glitches before we went live are interesting me that you were able to fix those, because I had mentioned Hablion, and he teleported players.
Oh, yeah. So Hablion's signature attack is opening these portals under you, and if you stay in it for more than a second or two, you'll get shot up into the air and have to like recover. And in it's Bloodstone Fen. I hate to get the map names wrong. That map, the theme was using special skills while gliding. So when he popped you up into the air, it was like, I've got a chance to use my gliding abilities. We didn't want to add that in retroactively to Crown Pavilion.
Would have added a lot of scope.
Yeah. And we'd have people fighting all the bosses by jumping off the rafters. So we had a couple iterations of how Hablion's teleport would still feel neat. Because it definitely, because there's so many mobs around, it can definitely throw you off. Like, you'll end up away from the fight. But see, I don't know if you want to talk about it. There was an earlier version.
Sure. I mean, the skill went through a lot of iteration, and a decent amount of that was due to feedback, like when we did our large internal playtests, people not really appreciating dying from fall damage, because there were, in Guild Wars 2, if you take fall damage and it would have put you down, you instead die, because that's what falling does. And so we just flat out removed the fall damage that you take from it. It's more of a CC or putting you into a place that you don't want to be, like a group of mobs, or into a lava wall if it gets shared to another boss. We were also running into an issue where the Queen's Gauntlet arenas, which are suspended above all of the pie slices, they have fairly large tripwires that boot you out if you're not supposed to be in there. And Hablion was teleporting you high enough in the air where you were getting caught in that tripwire, and then all of a sudden you're up on a catwalk.
Surprise!
Yeah, getting some, and being told like, hey, you're not supposed to go into the Queen's Gauntlet arena.
I wasn't trying to.
I never asked for any of this.
But we thought about like, hey, but if the arena's empty, like that's his cool move. He sends you in, and you gotta fight someone else. That would have been complicated. And we had a couple iterations where if you kill Hablion before the other bosses are dead, it shares out his move. And so we were like, okay, the teleport is his signature move. We got to give that to the other bosses.
Absolutely.
And it took a lot of tuning for all those different boss areas to get it working. I was originally thinking, okay, like all the other bosses will send you to the same spot. They'll send you to the center area because we don't want to try to customize a bunch of teleport locations for them. And we ended up needing to do it anyway, because what would happen is you'd be fighting, say, Karai, the centaur, way off on the side of the map. He would teleport you, and you'd hit a load screen. And that was no good. Because you'd go so far that it was like, okay, we're just going to, like, do the load screen. It's fine. You're like, I got to get back. I'm trying to fight.
Yeah, it's stressful.
Yeah.
It's not fun to be in the middle of that and get teleported so far that...
Then it was extra confusing. You'd load screen, and then you'd fall. And you're like, when does it end?
All right. Well, let's touch on the Labyrinthine Cliffs real quick and then take a few questions. I want to talk about the secret achievement with Evan Nashblade, because that's a really fun one.
I've seen at least one post about it, so I think it's pretty safe to talk about. I
guess it's not a secret anymore.
Right. I was testing, we had just put in the water balloon buckets, and I don't think that they really had a purpose other than just being a for fun thing at that point. And while taking a look at that, I also happened to be at the top of the cliffs where Evan and Keel hang out, and for fun, I just threw a water balloon at Evan Nashblade, and I said, hey Medina, it would be really fun if this was an achievement. And it just became a habit. Every time I ran by there, I'd throw a balloon at him for fun, and then I noticed one day he reacted and jumped up in the air, and I got an achievement. And I've never been more happy. It was very fun.
I didn't know that was your suggestion. That's amazing.
Yeah, I like that got put in just because you guys, day after day, were playing around and having fun while you were testing.
Right.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite things that are in Labyrinthine Cliffs?
I saw some people talking about this in map chat, but there's another little scene that Medina added in just to add a little bit of life. In a secluded section, there's a giant and a huge devourer. And the giant will walk over and plant some pumpkins and then go off and do something else, and the devourer will sneak over and eat the pumpkins, and then the giant will yell at him. And It's super fun.
Oh my gosh, I didn't stay long enough to see what happened. I tried to interact with both of them, and I was kind of running short on time, and I was like, all right, I guess there's nothing here, and I left. So stick around for a few minutes, I guess, if that happens.
Oh, I think one of my personal favorite things just in the festival is we have a recurring character from the festivals this year has been Gordon the Racing Choya.
Oh my gosh, Gordon.
Because we added races for Halloween because we're like, okay, mounts are the cool new thing.
Right.
Surely we can have a race in the labyrinth, right? And it was the first race I had set up. It took a lot of effort, but we had all the NPC racers to help show you where to go and
God
provide a
bless
little
Gordon.
humor. And we had gotten this Choya wearing a pumpkin costume, and we're like, we'll put him in the race.
He tries his best.
And he's very fast actually, but he's not the best at following the actual race route, so he doesn't do well placement wise. But it was such a funny character to have that the next festival, Winter's Day, we were like, you know what, like we're gonna request a version of him wearing a present box, and it was just a running thing that he would be in all the races for the festivals. Festival of the Four Winds actually had 3 races, and all of them were going to be really complicated to have NPC racers in, because, for example, there's the Flying Dolyak event. They just wouldn't work. They can't use all the skills to navigate it.
Oh, okay.
And in Pavilion Pursuit, the most dangerous race we've ever created, there's a part crossing lava, and he'd just plow through.
Because he would.
So,
poor Gordon.
Matthew Menina decided, and so we requested, like, can we get a kind of summer fun version of Gordon? So we decided we would just spawn him out in the festival, relaxing and hanging out and partying and doing his dances. And our artist gave us back this incredible Gordon model where he's got the
Yes,
summer beach attire, just down pat. He's got his sunglasses. He's got his bathing suit, sort of.
He has sunscreen.
Yeah, he's got his sunscreen, and we were just like falling over laughing the first time we saw his model, and we set him up to do his little Choya dance.
Yeah.
You're like, this is
Chelsea
the
Mills
best.
has made Gordon for each one of
I was
the
about to ask.
events, and I think consistently we've given a rough, hey, this is the sort of thing you would like to see, and then a couple weeks later we get an email with some screenshots and maybe a GIF or two, and it's just exceeds our expectations every single time.
Our request on that was like, can we just get him wearing some swim trunks or something?
Not swim trunks.
No.
But
he found beachwear, but he was a little confused on the details.
that's like I said, he tries his best, and that's what counts. He found part of a swimsuit, and he did what he needed to. So we have Gordon, sweetie. He tries his best, and he's got sunscreen, so he cares about taking care of himself.
Right.
So what I guess is his nose does not burn.
I think there was a suggestion at some point that maybe he should look a little more ripened from having been out in the sun.
Right.
But we didn't want to have that talk with narrative about so Choya, how do they even work?
I mean, they come from the desert too. You'd think we'd have seen that. This point.
He's no stranger to being out in the sun for long periods.
Yeah, and I'm going to start having concerns about the smell after a while.
No one really knows.
No, and I'm cool with that.
Are they a fruit? Are they a vegetable?
I've made my peace with my ignorance here.
Leave it a mystery.
So I do want to talk a little bit about bringing mounts into the festival, because we've added some things that I felt were really good quality of life. Just thinking about, okay, what would be good for players? Because we have mount rentals, because not everybody does have Path of Fire, but they're going to get on that. But in the meantime, we have mount rentals, and because there's so many reasons to hop off and on of different mounts, once you do that first one, you're good to go for an hour.
Yep. So that was another great thing that Matthew added as he was going through, because we had in previous festivals, I think starting in Winter's Day, we were like, okay, well, we added this cool mount race, but if you didn't have Path of Fire, like maybe you haven't picked it up yet, or you're waiting for one reason or another, you couldn't really participate. We set up the Halloween race such that, like, okay, it's technically possible to, set a decent time on foot. You do a little portal, you use your rushing skills.
Yeah.
But it's not as fun as getting to ride the Raptor around.
Right.
And so we talked with programming about, okay, can we have a kind of temporary mount system so we can let you pay to rent a mount and run the race.
Yeah.
And we got that, and we've been adding it through to all of our festival races, letting you use the appropriate mount. But in Labyrinthine Cliffs, you're so encouraged to use different mounts or get on and off your mount that we had you pay a token amount to rent the mount for other festivals, but
10 or 20
it started adding up really quickly when you were like, okay, I tried out the skimmer here, and then I had to get off, and then, so Matthew changed it to being a timed rental.
Yeah, it's like a buff that you have now. You
Yeah.
get an hour.
Yep, you get an hour, and then you can ride any mount. There's a separate one for the Griffin, but that's a little bit more special.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you can just pop on and off and get all of those collections.
Yeah, so we'll end up standardizing that over the next year for all of our festivals, that it's the same
good.
kind of,
Yeah.
You'll get the rental buff, and you can, and that way, if you accidentally fall off the Raptor or
Right. Since just interacting with
take a tumble.
anything will cause you to dismount.
Yeah.
Little quality of life.
Not that would happen to anybody, but
No.
Whatever. Well, do you guys want to take some questions?
Sure.
All right.
Sure. There's a question from Ben Lubar. How much taxpayer money does each watch night cost?
Oh, boy.
Well, like I said, they're still working through the old watch nights, so I think that defrays the expense of running the Crown Pavilion a little. Now they are taking donations from players to help run the boss blitz more quickly. You can wait for a little while, or you can be giving money. So I think that's to help defray some of the total expense.
Wait, is this what happened with all the money we gave Drubert?
No.
He's opened up a shop.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's an entrepreneur now.
Mm-hmm.
He's turned over a new leaf.
All right.
He doesn't strictly say that he used your funds to open up his shop. He's turned over a new leaf since his recent incarceration. He was in jail during Super Adventure Box.
God love him. Okay.
He's reformed. Maybe, kind of.
Maybe. Okay.
Ben Smith asks, who has better beach gear, Farron, Casimir, or Gordon? My vote is definitely Gordon.
Are we voting? Man, I gotta think back to South Sun Cove with Farron and Casimir.
Farron had the Speedo.
I'd argue that that's not beach wear. That's just when you look away from him for a moment where he switches into it.
I mean, I'm already on record as being a really big Gordon fan.
I'm going to make us 3 for 3 on Gordon. The bikini top on his little Choya bottom is just, I can't not.
I'll guess Jean-Philippe D asks, are favors only dailies this year? They're also part of the box that you get for doing 5 dailies in a row.
Oh, yeah.
Or 5 days worth of dailies in a row. You get a choice between all of the new Zephyrite weapons, a more rare Zephyrite box, and 3 favors.
Yeah, I think players will be getting that box for the first time later today. So
awesome.
That's going to be exciting.
Nice.
I've seen some players who are excited about having seen the new Zephyrite weapons in the wardrobe, but that'll be your chance to pick them up for yourself.
Awesome. All right, are we good?
I think we already
Anything
talked about a
else?
hidden thing. The
Oh yeah, you mentioned the
giant.
giant in his little skit.
Yeah. Alex was telling me earlier there are no secrets left. So
In the world.
Everything, yeah, and I think Matthew's going to talk a little bit about that in the next segment too. He was saying yesterday all of his secrets in the game are uncovered in the Labyrinthine Cliffs. So
That's great.
Yeah.
People are exploring around.
all right,
That's awesome.
well, I tell you what, we you guys stick around with us for a couple of minutes. We will let you guys get back to work, and thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you both hanging out with us for a
Our
little
pleasure.
bit.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure being here.
Yeah, and we will be back with Alex and Matthew in just a couple minutes. So stick around, guys. Thank you.
In our time of great need, the Zephyrite came together and helped us rebuild Lion's Arch. They showed us that in the midst of great strife, there can be even greater unity, that despite seemingly unending conflict, our alliance, our friendship, remains unbroken. It is in this spirit that I, on behalf of the Captain's Council, commence this Festival of the Four Winds.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to part 2 of our Festival of the Four Winds Guild Chat. I will let you guys introduce yourself and talk about what you worked on for this festival.
I'm Matthew Medina. I'm the game designer here at ArenaNet, and boy,
So many things.
Summer Festival, Festival Four Winds was definitely a big deal for me. I was the principal designer on the previous 2 releases, so coming back to this was a lot like coming home. But it was nice because I was able to take content that had 4 years of rust on it and polish it up and make sure that all the bits worked, and all the new things that we've added into the game since then also worked. So it was a nice little sort of passion project for me. So I did most of the Labyrinthine Cliffs content.
I'm Alex Kane. I'm a writer and narrative designer here at ArenaNet, and I helped Matt with a lot of the narrative wrapper around the Labyrinthine Cliffs, and I wrote some dialogue too for the Crown Pavilion material. A lot of the VO, put that together, and just helping to bring the Labyrinthine Cliffs and the whole Festival of the Four Winds to life. Was a really cool experience because, I don't have the same background with it that Matt does, obviously. I came in, joined ArenaNet like a year and a half ago almost, so I never really had an opportunity to check it out or build any content for it. So catching up on all the content in there and all the stories and all the characters was really a ton of fun. I really enjoy working on it.
Yeah. It's interesting having the two of you on here together because that's something we were talking about. We have this big contingent of players who are super excited to see all of this come back into the game. And then we have this group who was like, well, I wasn't here before. And I'm so happy to finally get to experience this thing I've been hearing about. And we have one of each. And these two perspectives working together it's been fun to hear both of you talk about it.
Yeah, I think it really worked out well to have that mix because, I was able to get in there and be like, now, here's all the stuff I remember that I want to follow up on, like Lion Guard Jess and Parker Cole, and these characters that were, sort of bit players in the previous release, but we're like, they're still here, so let's figure out where did everyone go. And Cardin had I don't know what happened to Cardin, honestly, but he's sort of off in his own little world now. He didn't have such a good time, and that's. Yeah, I mean, there's some good, there's bad. That's life.
Turns out a lot of people in a lot of the Zephyrite did not have the best time.
Yeah.
So,
No.
well, what were some of your favorite things about working on this release?
Gosh, it's a lot.
You can pick more than one.
Yeah. Gordon is probably my favorite.
Gordon, jeez, Gordon. I love him.
Yeah, I know. I
No,
don't
that's
wanna
a good
be a
thing.
broken record, but
No, he's great.
the moment I saw him in his little swimsuit, I thought, now there's no way I'm not going to use this.
Right?
And so I went to town. I spent a good 2 or 3 days prototyping all the different things that I wanted Gordon to do at this festival because I talked to Joe, first thing I was like, what do you want me to do with Gordon now that we have him? Because I'm like, and we, as Joe talked about in the earlier segment, like we couldn't find a way to make him race the way that he would normally race. And we were like, well, but that's okay because this is supposed to be like a summer vacation. So what would a Choya do on vacation? And so I just went to town and I came up with some of the craziest ideas, and I picked the best ones to ship into the game, and maybe we'll shelve the others for next year.
I have to say, I didn't know about him plowing into the lava, and that was part of why he couldn't race, but it's such a Gordon thing to do.
It is.
It is so, it just fits so well, and I understand that's why we couldn't use it, but it works.
Yeah. That would have been entertaining to see.
Yes. Yeah. How about you, Alex?
Well, I didn't get an opportunity to delve into the deep lore surrounding Gordon, the relaxing Choya, this time around, unfortunately. But next time, we'll see what happens. No, I think that the thing that I enjoyed the most was probably one of the first things I worked on, which was the Keel Nash Blade material at the very top of the Labyrinthine Cliffs. Where Keel gives her big speech, and then Evan is just sort of standing there. It's like a big PR show, and he's not sure why he's there or why he was invited. And it seemed like a lot of fun to sort of dive into, their relationship in the past, and they've obviously been at odds for quite some time. I noticed that you're wearing your Keel for Council pin. I noticed the Evan for Council pin was in the last bit.
Yeah, Joe would one.
Oh man.
Hey. Politics, it's part of everything.
It's part of everything. So. It's a rough game.
Yeah.
Keel and Nash Blade, they both play their cards, but it was a lot of fun writing that dialogue, catching everyone up on where their story is and how it relates to everything else that's been going on in Guild Wars 2 and Living World, and that was very fun to write.
Yeah. They seem to have this grudging respect now and almost friendship. I mean, there's a little banter happening.
That was part of the whole put them in the same place for a very long time thing, because, it's like in a TV show or something when two characters get locked in a room, they're like, I don't like you very much. Well, I guess we're stuck here. So it really seemed like if they were stuck in the same place for long enough, they would start asking questions. They would have like that little back and forth with one another. There's a lot of stuff that happened in, for example, like Season 1 of Living World that we call back to a little bit. For players who haven't played Season 1, it's a little, I don't know, it's spoilers. Yeah. Evan closed down a teleporter during the Lion's Arch evacuation, and it's sort of clear that he's been punished for that over the course of the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
But that whole story has never really been laid out why exactly things happened the way they did, and so it was a nice opportunity to put a bow on that little story. And it was, at the end of the day, it was just an excuse to have two people who don't like each other in a very small space.
That's always fun.
Yeah, it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And the we had been talking before the show that like the two actors, Courtney Taylor and Sam Riegel, they get so into their roles, as we've seen in that clip.
Yeah, huge shout out to both of them.
And so like having this amazing dialogue where there's back and forth and each one's trying to get the upper hand, and I don't know, I really loved
Courtney Taylor, she was gesticulating so wildly during her performance that she knocked off her headset. And,
yes. Courtney Taylor, it's really fun watching her do that because I think part of what makes her good is that she means it. Mm-hmm. Ellen Keel is giving this speech to this crowd in front of her, and she is into it.
Yeah.
And Courtney really embodied that. And Sam Riegel doing Evan Neshblade is the same way. He is serious about this, and he gets it, and he's not messing around. He's not phoning it in. So. Yeah. It's fun watching that video of her opening the festival, and
no, she sells it. It's great, and you can really feel. That performance really comes across in the game too. It's great, and then throughout the whole thing, and over the course of all their conversations, seeing the two kind of soften a little bit, being able to hear it in the performance too, was very cool.
Yeah, it feels good to watch. So, well done on that.
It was really everything in Labyrinthine of the Four Cliffs, even the narrative stuff, was really a team effort between myself and Matt and the rest of the team. When I started work on it, a lot of the non-VO stuff, where you walk up to characters and there's text in a box, Matt wrote initial passes for all of that stuff for the most part. And so a lot of what I did for that was, I tweaked and, adjusted a couple of things. But I don't think I fundamentally changed the core intent or anything behind any of the conversations that were there, or any of the characters that were there. So that was really it was a fun way to sort of explore the Labyrinthine Cliffs. It was like having a tour guide almost.
Yeah,
it was really cool.
Well, let's talk about some of the other Zephyrite NPCs that we have text conversations for. Who were some that you really liked? Who were some that stood out for you?
It wasn't the Zephyrites themselves. It was
really?
We had a pretty early alpha test where we had people jump in and just because a lot of this was like, is this actually going to work? Like, I thought it felt good to be on a griffin in this area, but like, if stakeholders don't agree, then we have to go back to the drawing board. So we wanted to have a pretty early play test, and so we did. And one of the pieces of feedback I got pretty early was, yeah, this feels great, but it doesn't have like this flavor of so much has been added to the game, and it's just a bunch of human characters running around, and we had a fairly human-centric expansion in Path of Fire because Alona was very sort of isolated in that way, and so I got feedback that we need to make this area feel more cosmopolitan, like this is a real worldwide festival. So that's where I went to adding the Olmecon. I added the Itzel. I added a couple of Newhawk lumbering around, which was always tough because they're a bit big, and finding places where they can fit in a map like the Cliffs, where they've got little ledges everywhere.
Yeah, they're like hitting your head on the bamboo as they go by.
I almost tried to get to see if I could get a
clonk animation.
A big Newhawk to pick up one of the Zephyrite crystals and jump, but it
that would have been
they didn't
great.
have the animations, so probably couldn't do that.
Too bad.
The Olmecon actually was an interesting. We'd finished a lot of the festival VO and non-VO at the time. Most of the NPCs were laid out, and then I think it was one of the testers who made some offhand comment. Was like, we've got the Olmecon now, and they're they've been exposed to the great wide world now. Is it entirely possible that Rox, who was in the Festival of the Four Winds prior, would oh, Festival of the Four Winds, they're great. Olmecon buddies, you should go check it out. And we would have some Olmecon actually in the festival, and that discussion happened very quickly. And I think it was like the same day or maybe the next day we had a couple of Olmecon in there, and we had some dialogue that we'd written up, and they got some very fun. It was very fun to write that VO in particular because it's someone who's never left their home before going to basically the equivalent of the World's Fair, and seeing all this crazy stuff around them. So there's some really fun stuff, like there's the Olmecon who doesn't know how to interact with shopkeepers that aren't Char. There's the Olmecon who sees some kid throw a kebab on the ground and what are you doing?
I haven't encountered those.
Yeah, so there's a lot of fun little side stories there.
I saw that there were the two Olmecon. There's the Olmecon couple who they're traveling before they have cubs, and the one's afraid of heights.
Yes.
And I don't know who wrote that dialogue, but it is the cutest.
At this point, like a single person
like
taking
everybody,
credit for it is entirely
I definitely know that, especially with the Olmecon. I went through a number of hands because they were new to me as well. Like I didn't have a fairly good sense. Like I had played the release and I'd seen the Olmecon, but I was like, I don't know enough about their culture yet to really be considered an expert. So I think I did take a pass at it, and I sent it to you, and I think Alex did a pass on it, and we may have even, I know we talked to the episode team as well and got their input on what would Omicron do at a festival like this?
Yeah, I remember writing up a draft and like turning my monitor over to Armin Constantine, who wrote a lot of the Omicron stuff, and was like, Armin, read this. And he's like, I'm busy. I'm like, read it. He's like, all right, fine. He's like, all right, fine. Yeah, that sounds great. Good.
Yeah.
You know, stuff. There's a lot of those kind of interactions between the writers.
But I do really like that part of the team effort is making sure that someone who knows the Omicron well enough, and it's not just, I don't know, throw some dialogue in there and hope for the best.
That doesn't get far along. There are a lot of checks and balances, especially on the narrative side, to make sure that like tone and everything is being, so like a lot of the last minute dialogue changes were actually in table reads with the writer's room, you know, where, you know, people like Tom and Samantha Walschlager, like just like helping to pitch ideas and like, oh, that line's, you know, could be funnier if you change this, or this, you know, emotional beat's not hitting as much if, you know, maybe change this around. And it really helped sort of tie everything together at the very last step.
Yeah, we've talked about table reads on Guild Chat before, and they sound really, really helpful and really hilarious also.
They always become funny at some point or another. Because, I mean, at some point someone's trying to, like, basically someone's got a joke, and you want the funniest version of that joke in the game. Yeah. And so you've got a bunch of writers in the room who are just throwing out punchlines, and you want the one that gets the most laughs, and so the room has to laugh. Yeah. And if they don't laugh, it's not a joke. So...
Yeah, table reads are long too. Like you're in a room for multiple hours, and I think that serves two things. One is you kind of have to start putting humor in, because otherwise you're going to start punching each other. And then the other thing is, like, after a couple of hours of reading and like debating back and forth, you kind of get a little kooky, and so you kind of, you know, it starts the gears turning in your head of like, what's the goofiest thing I can suggest that's not going to get shot down?
Everyone's been there. Someone's typing something on a computer screen that's projected up on a wall or a television. They type the wrong word. It's a silly word. Someone says the word. Everyone laughs. Yeah.
Well, the flavor text throughout the Labyrinthine Cliffs has really made a difference. I've been on my way someplace in the festival more than once, and I've seen something out of the corner of my eye or heard it in passing and looped back around and completely stopped what I was doing, and it has been worth it every time.
Well, I know I'm weird. Like, I worked on the cities.
That's why you're here.
Way back in history. But the thing that I always said was, I consider a great personal success is if somebody feels the desire to go around and record everything. And they've already, like,
within 24 hours.
Yeah, like, I saw on Reddit there was a thread of like, here's all the ambient conversations and dialogues in the cliffs, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like,
that's awesome. Get it on the wiki.
Yeah. That makes me super proud. I get chills because I'm like, the team, you know, like Alex said, I think we are really proud of this festival, and to see that it's getting that kind of response from our players.
You guys should be very proud. I know you've been working incredibly hard. You and I first started talking about this, I think, in January.
Yeah.
Was the first time you told me you guys were working on bringing it back.
I know, and even then I was sort of like, I remember, I think it was on the elevator ride down one day, and we just ran into each other, and it was like my first week on the project now, and I was like so excited. I was like, I'm working on the Festival of Four Winds. And then after we separated and I got in the car, I was like, should I have told her that? I mean, obviously, you know, we're
always
all on NDA, but I was still sort of like, boy, it's not quite real yet. Like, I haven't gotten all my approvals I needed to, like.
Always tell me things. Because my answer, I was like, okay, we're going to do a guild channel about it. And you're like, can I be on it? Yes. So
here we are.
That was, we were so excited, and that was like almost 8 months ago. So yeah, it was. You guys have put in a ton of work on this, so you should be proud.
Yeah, it's good.
So, speaking of NBC. Also,
wow, are we getting corporate sponsors?
NPCs.
Oh, okay. That's
I've
very
had
different.
a very long day.
Yeah. Okay.
Speaking of NPCs, let's talk about a Quaggan one. Let's talk about Kukuchu.
Oh, man. Kukuchu.
Because
Kukuchu.
he did not make good choices in life.
He made a great many bad choices.
So many bad choices.
But
Many bad choices.
What?
very, very interesting choices.
Yes, I mean, his life was not boring.
No.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that I think Matt gave me. Like, that was the first thing we talked about. I remember Bobby Stein came up to me. He's like, Alex, we're working on Festival of the Four Winds. We need you to work on some stuff. Also, Matt's got this idea for a collection.
Matt did a thing.
Yeah, Matt, and I get this thing, and it's like 30. It's like all the different versions of Kukuchu, the inexorable, the incombustible, the incongruous, and
I feel like there were 4 years of pent up bad ideas that just released all at once.
This thing, to me, it felt like Athena sprung from the mind of Zeus. It was all fully formed.
Yeah.
And there was never a time when it was still being worked on. It just existed all of a
So
sudden.
tell us about this.
Sorry. Wow. Yeah, Kukuchu was, he was just this bit NPC that we had in the festival the last couple of times that it ran, where he was a fire breather, a Quaggan fire breather, and that was sort of, he thought that was a novelty act. And I guess for Quaggan, it probably was.
For Quaggan, not in a world with elementalists.
Correct.
And,
Yeah, and so he was always kind of a sad sack character.
Aww.
You felt bad for him, and I think the people gave him pity applause, because he was trying. As Gordon, he was always trying his best.
Kukuchu should have put a
the
bikini
difference-
top on his butt.
Well, maybe, yeah, he should talk to Gordon about his PR.
Franchising a little bit.
Yeah. So when we brought the festival back, the first question I had on my to-do list was, what would happen to Gordon? Where would he be? And I didn't want to bring back the whole act, because it was like we already had. I mean, for festivals, it was actually this is a little bit too behind the scenes for probably a lot, but festivals.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, sorry.
Spoilers.
Festivals didn't have VO budgets.
You just wanted Mark to make the noise.
All the time. If I could
It's a
walk
great
around in
noise.
real life and have him do that,
That'd be pretty
great.
awesome.
No, Mark. Go ahead.
Yes. So,
Sorry.
so yeah, we were told pretty early on, festivals don't have VO budgets, and I was like, how am I going to do a festival like this without a VO budget? So we had a little bit of negotiations that took place, in which I did secure us a fair amount, a small chunk. But of that, it was like, okay, we have small enough chunk that I can't justify giving Kukuchu, because Kukuchu before in his act had like over a dozen scenes.
Yeah.
And so it was like almost 400 lines for just Kukuchu. And I'm
Whoa.
like, no, not 400
like
lines. What am I saying?
A whole raid.
Yeah. Sorry, my count's way off.
Wait, the Kukuchu raid.
Yeah.
400 words
Spoilers.
or something like that. I don't know.
Sorry.
We're sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So Kukuchu doing VO was out. So I was like, okay, well, he's going to be off screen somehow. So I came up with this story in my head of his, spiral down. Because I thought, hey, once the Zephyrite left the last time and they ended up crashing in Dry Top, his audience is gone. The festival is no longer there, and so he is trying his best to keep his act relevant and be, attracting an audience, but he just can't. And so he decides at some point, I'm going to reinvent myself. And so he changes his act, and that doesn't work. And so he decides, I've got to change it again. And so he changed it again. And so I wanted to do this as a collection of flyers that he and his team, his PR team, had printed up and put on the, various surfaces of the festival, trying to attract an audience, and it just never worked. And,
The flyers are very well designed, by the way. I imagine him, like, in Photoshop or something, making these things and going to like a Kinko's
so
and printing them out.
that was also a bit of I actually had put in a request for individualized folders because I want flyers because I wanted each one to look like the story that we were telling, but we ended up
triple
with
the budget.
general.
And
yeah. The artist kind of looked at me like,
You want them doing
Stop
what?
coming
Sorry.
over here.
Yeah.
This isn't going to work.
Kukuchu, your artists are great. Your street team is not.
Yeah, and I was half tempted to do it myself because as a former artist myself, I could certainly find a way to do that, but I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. So.
Sure. So do you have a headcanon about how this happened?
I
Since
do.
there's no Kinkos.
Well, I mean, there is sort of, because if you go to like the Order of Whispers hangout, the hideout, they have a printing press where they're printing off maps of Tyria. So the technology exists to
Okay.
make flyers.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll just say you went there.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening to Kukuchu?
I mean, spoiler alert. Sorry. So yeah, he tries
guys.
a number of different acts, each one getting more and more desperate. He falls into disfavor. He turns to vices. Let's just say that
Bloodstone dust.
as things tend to happen, and eventually he kind of goes crazy and gets into some violent altercations and ends up going to trial and becoming incarcerated.
Man.
And yes, eagle-eyed players have already found his location.
I'm sorry,
He
the
is in the
secrets are.
cliffs. Yeah. It's okay. I mean, I put them in there hoping that players would find them. I just was surprised how quickly they find stuff.
Y'all are
They're
fast.
always surprising me.
They either find them immediately or they never find them at all.
That's true.
Is that a hint?
Is that supposed to be him over there? Is that?
No,
that's a different-
although
No, he's just been
that's
chilling around
just
here forever.
pirate quagga,
Okay.
yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
quaggan just off camera. I don't know if you can't see
It's
it.
the Quaggan backpack. They've seen him. He's been here
Oh.
for a couple years.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, Sarah Kane, a cosplayer, a Guild Wars 2 cosplayer, made that several years back and sent it along with the legendary hammer over there.
Nice.
Yeah, when she moved, she didn't have room for it, so he's ours now. And
Excellent.
We've got
at
lots of room here.
some point, there was a pirate hat, and I forget why, and it stayed in the room, and so now we have Pirate Quaggan.
Pirate quagga.
We'll bring him out September 19th.
Yeah.
So,
That's great.
yeah, he's nice, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the return of the Flying Dolyaks and come off of the sad topic of Kukuchu the Fallen.
Yeah, so the Flying Dolyaks was that was when we opened up the map, we made the decision early on. We don't want to have this be combat oriented, this map, because the Crown Pavilion is all about combat. And so we were sort of like, let's make a very clear delineation that if you want fighting, you go here. If you want fun and exploration, just kind of activities and races and stuff like that, you go to the cliffs. And so I pulled out, the combat events that were in there. A lot of them were not up to our standards today anyway, so it was no, big loss, with one exception, which was the Flying Dolyak race. That hadn't really been a race before. It was just a normal event that players could, talk to the trader at the bottom, get transformed into a baby Dolyak, and you had to rush your way up.
Super
cliff.
fun.
And it was fun back then, but it was also very broken. I to this day don't know how we allowed it to ship because it was pretty ghastly, the things that we had to do. We didn't have any standardized race technology at the time. We had guild races, but those were very specific to guilds and they worked in a very particular way that I tried to reverse engineer for the Flying Dolyaks and it just didn't really work. So I took what I could. And so we were like, no, we're going to do this now that we have race technology. We're going to do this the right way.
Okay.
And so it took a little bit of doing, but I finally managed to get it where, I translated the old event into the new race event. It's not perfect. There's a lot of things I would probably want to do for it if the festival comes back, which it is.
I was like, if?
I think it's
I
perfect,
wanted it.
and he can only make it more perfect.
Perfecter.
Perfecter.
Right.
I wasn't too involved in that aside from cleaning up some of the text, but there was a very fun little bit. Keel and Nashblade are talking about the Dolyak race at one point, and I believe the thing that people were bumping on was Nashblade referred to the process as transforming into a Dolyak.
Yes.
And everyone was like, no, that's not what happens. You don't this isn't like The Fly. Like, you don't transform physically into a Dolyak. It's more like mesmer illusion.
Yeah.
And so we had to like change the text there, and that was one of the strangest notes that I'd ever received from somebody. It was just like it was like in the margin, it was like not actually transformation illusion. I'm like, oh, well, okay.
I'll make Nashblade
allude
to that.
Just
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. All right, we have a couple more quick things to talk about.
Yeah.
But if you guys have questions, now's the time. We'll try to get to a couple of those before we wrap
Cool.
up.
Yeah.
So you have a few more secret things that you put in there. What are some of the other things that players have found?
There's the cow.
Let's talk about the cow. What?
What the what?
It's a
That's
confused cow.
why? How? I have.
I mean, if you ended up on a cliff, wouldn't you be confused?
Oh, man.
Yes, and I too am. Come on.
I
Can't question
Was
his
it just
methods.
a late night at the office, and
No, so
you were like, you know what, cow?
There is a funny story here, which is I got a bunch. So we went to stakeholder feedback with the festival, and I got a bunch of notes. And one of the notes was, "There's this really gorgeous vista from the big pillar in the southwest corner of the map. Can you please put something there?" I'm like, what am I going to put up there? It's like I already put a solitary Sylvari up on a thing, which is further north, and like I didn't want to put another NPC there, and so I turned to one of our fellow game designers, Connor Fallon, who worked with me on Path of Fire, and I said, "What can I give me something?" And he's like, "Just put a cow up there. Just put a confused cow up there."
Connor, thank you.
And I'm like, all right. Yeah, I got to give credit where credit is due. The confused cow is because of Connor.
Go, Connor.
The true hero of the Festival of the Four Winds.
Yes.
And that's all I want to say about that.
Ooh.
Somebody go
There's-
get Connor real quick.
There's some deep lore here.
Deep cow lore.
Deep cow lore. We got to save some stuff for the next Festival of the Four Winds
Exactly.
people.
And you
Next
don't
year,
know.
2 cows.
Honestly,
How?
I've
But
been
how?
so surprised by the reaction of the cow that it's sort of one of those things where it's like, now I kind of feel like we have to follow up on this because of the interest. It's generated so many threads and questions on Reddit and the forums. I'm like, confused cow might have to be a recurring character.
Yes. Like, Alex, get on this.
But
We need some lore.
we have to talk to Z
I've been
about
working
this.
full time on this for the last 3 weeks. There is
Just
a
the
lot
cow,
of
or-
there's just exclusively cow lore.
Yeah.
Z's going to be waiting for me when we leave this room. And he's going to be frowning.
Yeah. No, there is no deep cow lore. Not yet.
That's quote of
Not
the
yet.
day right there.
Yes.
Yes. Let's talk
Uh,
about something else.
Yes. So what else do you want players to know about the Festival of the Four Winds? Matthew.
Let's see. I mean, there's the Quaggan. That is a nice little. Again, I'm an old school gamer, and old being the key word there.
Yay. Me too.
But so I really love when games sort of hide things just for the fun of exploring and
Heck
finding
yeah.
them, without necessarily tying a reward or an achievement or some other thing to it.
Sure.
And so when I was running around in the map, our amazing map artist Carson Marlowe, who did such a great job of touching this place up and bringing it up to our current standards. I mean, even things like I noticed like the sand on the beach had like so much more texture and like waviness, and I was like,
wow.
I spent a long time just looking at it because I was like, oh my gosh, these things. He did an amazing job with the underwater, because before it was just sort of like there was just water and then there was like terrain under there. And he went in and he added a bunch of rocks and coral and seaweed and all that. And I'm like, I want players to explore this space, right? Like, but I didn't really want to put a whole like event or anything like that. So I just put a little Quaggan, who is dead, and you could find his body, and near his body is a lantern. And if you go near the lantern, you get a soft radiant glow. And I wasn't expecting players to find this as quickly as and figure out how to, solve this thing either. But if you take the Radiant Glow, you can take it to different lanterns all across the map that I strung, and you can take it back to a Quaggan house, and you go in there, and his ghost tells you, "Thank you."
Oh.
It's just one of those things that I wanted to put in some little ambient storytelling, and players found it.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
How about you?
Uh,
Top that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can. One of the things that I did when I was starting to write the VO was I was looking back at old conversations that had been written for the original Festival of the Four Winds, and trying to see if there were any threads there that I really enjoyed that I might want to update for the new content.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of archetypes that reappear. There are some thieves that are hanging around, and they have a fun little side story. There's, I think in the original Festival of the Four Winds, there was, the person who's never seen a char before, and how do they react? So that was a fun conversation to write, where the char is like getting really indignant because everyone thinks that, she's cute and fluffy, and she's like, "No, I'm mean, I'm scary."
Stop petting me.
There's the char that there was fun stuff about how do we like explain mounts, and why there were mounts in Alona but there weren't mounts anywhere else. And
I saw that little bit of dialogue.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, really, it's just they thought that you had everything handled, and mounts are so cool. Why wouldn't you have them? Then it was a fun little way to explain that. And the Springers would have been really useful in Maguma. And they're like, yeah, I know. It was a lot of fun it's sort of like the original festival was like this isolated piece of history, and then bringing it back into the modern world was a lot of fun. There were a lot of threads there to explore. There were a lot of fun characters to revisit. It was great. I'm looking forward to what happens next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one more thing I want to touch on, and that's the Treasure Hunt meta event. Because we've added that in. Everybody seems to be having a good time with it. So, and you worked on that, didn't you?
Yes, I did. When we looked at back to that feedback session that we had early on, it wasn't really a feedback note. It was more of an offhand comment about how, maybe we could look at like coming up with a map-wide meta. But it was more just like, we don't think the map needs it, but take a look, see if there's anything that strikes your fancy. And I spent about a day kind of coming up with some potential ideas. But everything I came up with was like, the only thing that really makes sense for this area is movement, joy of movement. Mm-hmm. And we already had the Amnoon meta event where you collect casino coins, which very much took advantage of mounts to jump around. And I thought, that's what I want to do, especially because Festival is available to players who don't have Path of Fire, and they may not have had the chance to do this. So I kind of want to give them a chance to experiment with the mounts, because we had the rented mounts, and give them a way to like jump around and have fun and really experience for themselves. This is what mounts add to the game. Like, this is fun stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it was a lot of, just taking the meta event idea, mapping it onto the cliffs, and figuring out where all the treasure bags would go and how to collect them. Funny story out of that was, like, currently the way that our event system works, there's a hard cap of 999 objects that you can turn in for an event like that. I thought, there's no way people are going to get that money, and like routinely the event is succeeding at like 2,000 bundles of loot. So I'm like, oh well, okay, I guess that's something we'll have to take a look at, maybe increasing that.
Yeah, our players are real good.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And remember how you were like, they won't find all this stuff so fast. And
I
good job.
Have to not underestimate our players.
Yeah, I've found that's the worst idea ever.
Yes.
So awesome. Well, do you guys want to take a couple of questions here?
Yeah.
One of them
sure.
we've sort of answered, but
Oh yeah, number 7
Yeah.
from Max Hanna. I think we addressed that.
yeah. But now you have to. Why are the Omicron in Labyrinthine Cliffs? We don't see them anywhere now. All of a sudden, they're in the cliffs.
Are these going to be more popular? I think the Omicron are great.
Yeah, I agree.
I like them.
yeah.
But yeah, they heard about the festival, and I guess Rox told you guys should go check this out now that you've
Yeah.
been exposed to the wider world.
Yeah.
Come
on.
They've got some cool stuff over
Yeah.
there. They've got
There's a party. Go.
they've got a party. They've got a beach.
Yeah. And then the overarching meta reason too of like we wanted this place to feel like we brought all the stories together.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really important for us to have representation from
Yeah.
all the different places.
They have a super weird Choi. You should go see it.
Yes. Port Gordon.
Yeah. Let me see.
I'll take Obsidian asks, would it have been possible to use phasing tech to hide some of the NPCs and objects in the cliffs that could spoil or confuse new players who haven't played through all the story? Possible, yes. I don't know that would have been something we would want to have done. I didn't necessarily think of the Omicron as a spoiler. Did you?
No, I mean, yeah, we sort of. Though,
Sorry, I put it on the spot.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, you did. No, you're fine.
It's a representation of where the world is at that moment.
Right.
So
Yeah.
even if you don't know who these characters are, you would still see them. And it's, even in like the real world, it's like, oh, you don't know who these people are. Well, maybe you should learn more about
Right.
them. And
Right.
I feel like that sort of captures the essence of the festival. Even if you don't know who they are, you're like, oh, these are weird-looking Char. What's their story?
Yeah.
You can sort of piece together some stuff from
Yeah.
their dialogue, but yeah, you should play some more episodes of Living World.
Yeah. And I feel like it would be more spoilery if they were standing there saying, I'm an Omicron, and here's my backstory, and here's how I came to be here.
And it would be even weirder if there was just an empty spot and people were like walking around it.
And interacting with,
Yeah.
Yes.
what are you doing? Nothing.
And we do have that where in the opening of the festival, the first time you come near Keelan and she's giving her opening ceremony speech, I do have a bunch of NPCs that I'm hiding, that I'm displaying
really?
for the ceremony, and then when the ceremony ends, they go away,
Yeah.
which has caused some
Yeah.
confusion. Hindsight being what it is, I would have probably done a little different implementation on that.
Keel and Nashblade have like a space thing, like you're not allowed to stand within.
Right.
You have to back away.
Okay, so yes, there's that. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
And then the other question is, what about the orb in the shipwreck in the southeast corner? That is related to the Quaggan that I talked about. So yes, go find that and try it for yourself.
The orbs of sadness.
The orb of sadness.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mm.
okay. Well, I don't want to end on too sad of a note,
'Kay.
so I will tell you guys thank you very, very much. It is super exciting to bring the festival back. I know
Yes.
you both feel the same way, and we are having a super good time with it. The festival goes until August 14th.
Mhm.
Yep.
So get in there and have a really good time playing around in Labyrinthine Cliffs, the Boss Blitz, and the Queen's Gauntlet. And I will let you guys get back to work, and I will see you guys in game.
Praise
Thanks, all.
Joko.
Praise Joko, and
I had
vote
to.
Keel, evidently.
Yes, vote Keel.